Introduction to Library Technical Services, Week 7, Financial Management, Part 1. When looking at financial management, we're considering the financial activities within acquisitions. We need to keep records of many financial-related transactions. It's important to always align to the budget and to know how much money we're spending continually, so we don't order beyond our budget capabilities. This means we have to track the items we receive. This is pretty important, as sometimes after you place an order, you receive items in different shipments. Similar to Amazon, items will ship on the same day, maybe overnight, or others in a few weeks, but you can order everything together. It's the same with the acquisitions departments in libraries, except you're usually not told when the items will be available or shipped to you. Once you receive the items, you generally receive an invoice. Keeping track of those invoices of what you paid for is pretty important, especially if you're part of an institution and you're not personally writing the checks. Tracking those payments is essential to have a firm control over your orders and budget. You can also use this information to project costs and estimate future expenses. For example, the New Year's budget. When we allocate funds in acquisitions, we're typically looking at three main resources: books, serials, and e-resources. These allocations may be subdivided into specialized categories such as fiction books or academic journals. And then sometimes acquisitions may oversee expenses in other areas: furniture, supplies, equipment, technology, staffing, and events. Whenever allocations are created, you will want to have set outcomes for them. That is, we want to ensure that the allocations make sense for the library. Ensure meaning that they're aligned to proper funding needs. Once the allocations are set up, we need to make sure that we're spending within the allocations appropriately. When we look at spending and compare that to what we've received, we want to determine if there is a way to assess that we've spent our budget to meet the needs that we intended. And then finally, we can take that assessment and generate a report and communicate to our stakeholders and use that data to inform the setup for the next round of allocations. Within all this, there are some elements of financial record keeping that I want to highlight. When we talk about expenses, there's a process called encumbering. Encumbering is setting aside money from a budget before actually spending it. So one places an order for $500, but we haven't received the items yet, and we don't have an invoice. But we know that that $500 is committed to that order. That commitment is an encumbrance. Once the items are received, then we can expense those funds. Let's say only $300 worth of items show up. Then $300 is expensed and $200 remains encumbered. Let's say we had to cancel the remaining order for whatever reason. We could encumber the remaining $200, which would go back into the budget as available funds again. Another area to pay attention to in your financial records is any particular funds. These may be grants or donations. These may come with special conditions on how funds can be spent or when they need to be spent. You may need to track them for a special report as well. So ensure that any special funding does not get entangled with your regular budget. These will need to be tracked separately. Finally, audits. Audits can look at an organization's operations or structure, determine if an organization is compliant with regulations, and look specifically at financial records. It's always important to keep organized records for audit purposes. And remember, audits are supposed to be helping an organization understand its processes and what it should be doing. They are not there to punish an organization, even if it seems that way. When looking at allocations, we should have an assessment of the library's collection. The assessment leads to insights about the collection that informs the budgetary needs of the collection. This will inform collection development, providing the scope and depth of the collection, how it's being used, the generally available inventory, and identifying any weeding needs. The assessment will also provide information on local institutional needs. So suppose the library belongs to a larger institution. In that case, the assessment will demonstrate how the library aligns the collection to the institution's mission and can be used to ask for additional funding and support. The assessment might also align with other organizational needs. There are other organizations, such as accrediting organizations or donors, that might be outside the institution. When we assess a collection, there are various methods used, but in a general sense, they will either be collection or use-centered. When using a collections-focused methodology, you may use lists of titles and resources, such as lists from choice reviews or other book and resource recommendations. This also relates to expert opinions about resources, where we may not have a list, but we might have personal knowledge or subject experts to draw information from. We can also compare the collection to similar libraries in size and scope. Often, academic libraries use each other's data to bolster their arguments to increase their collection sizes or staffing needs. There are also referenced collection standards that can come from outside sources, such as accreditation agencies and library organizations. Use-centered approaches will look at how a collection is used instead of what is in the collection. So, what are the circulation statistics? What do our community members think about the collection? How do they use it? Are there interlibrary loan statistics that can inform the collection? And do we care to look at any bibliometrics that might give weight to the importance of our collection? JIFs, also known as journal impact factors, are an example of bibliometrics, and these scores assigned to journals are based on how often they're cited within the literature. The higher your impact, the more important that journal is seen in academic literature. From this assessment, libraries tend to decide not just what to keep and grow, but also what to deselect or weed from the collection. We do this for various reasons, but basically it keeps the collection current and frees up space for new materials. Musty is a set of characteristics of items to help determine if a resource should be removed from a collection. M stands for misleading, and this is for any resource that is just factually incorrect. U stands for ugly, and if an item is damaged or is in such poor condition you don't want to use it, you may want to get rid of it. S stands for superseded, meaning a newer version or new information has been released. T stands for trivial and refers to resources that were at one point timely but no longer are. I stands for irrelevant and refers to those resources that don't have any relation to your community or collection. And E for elsewhere. That refers to resources that can be found in other places easily. Additional characteristics that might help guide decisions on weeding a collection include duplicates, unwanted gifts, obsolete items, and any unused materials. And then, of course, sometimes items can be deselected, not because of those reasons, but because of an expressed concern from the community. These are also known as challenged materials. Sometimes challenged materials are also referred to as banned books. Libraries are often at odds with these decisions, but hopefully policies will be in place for the challenging issues. Libraries should be aware of their collection development policy and be able to refer to it when encountering a challenge. They should also refer to the Library Bill of Rights and the ALA policy interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights, which affirms the library's responsibility to provide information in an unbiased manner. At the same time, though, the library needs to balance this out with the expressed concerns from the community. Challenged materials are always a tricky situation.